Tag Team Wrestling's first ever recognized world champions date back to the 1950s when Ray Ickett and Hardball Haggerty win the NWA Pacific Coast Tag Team titles on April 4th, 1950. Tag Team Wrestling wouldn't be seen as a main attraction until the 1970s when on June 3rd, 1971, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation crowned the first ever World Tag Team Champions, Crazy Luke Graham and Tarzan Taylor, managed by Captain Lou Albano. Tag Team Wrestling would later explode in the 1980s and promotions worldwide would fill their cards with exciting tag team matches. In this list, we count down Wrestle Savage's top 8 picks for the greatest tag teams of all time. So tag us in, and let's begin. Number 8. The Midnight Express. Jim Cornette's Midnight Express had 2 iterations, the first of Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton from 1981 to 1987, and then Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton from 1987 on. Jim Cornette is considered to be one of the greatest managers ever based on his long-standing work across the territories with the Midnight Express, and the duo is credited by professional wrestling historians as the pioneers of modern tag team wrestling, inventing a lot of tag team psychology and double teams that are still used to this very day. The Midnight Express would hold tag team gold everywhere they went, and they won tag team championships over 50 times, a record that may never be beaten. Number 7. The Dudley Boys. Paul Heyman based the gimmick for the Dudleys on the Hanson brothers from the 1977 movie Slapshot, with their taped up glasses being a nod to those characters. Although the Dudley Boys started as a faction with several other Dudley brothers, Devon and Bubba would ultimately go on to be the most successful members and become one of the most iconic tag teams of all time. From 1996 to 2016, the Dudley Boys, later known as Team 3D, would win World Tag Team Championships 18 times. They first captured gold by defeating the Eliminators John Kronus and Perry Saturn at Extreme Championship Wrestling's Hostile City Showdown on March 15, 1997, and they would go on to dominate and influence the tag team scene for 19 years. Number 6. The Rock and Roll Express. In 1983, Memphis Booker Jerry the King Lawler paired Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton as the Rock and Roll Express, basing their gimmick and look on the rising popularity of glam metal at the time. The pair would become synonymous with tag team wrestling in the 80s and 90s, working for every major promotion on the planet. The Rock and Roll Express may also be the longest running tag team in the history of professional wrestling, working matches to this day, with Robert Gibson only recently stepping away from the ring and Ricky Morton continuing to tag with his son, Kerry Morton. Collectively, the Rock and Roll Express held tag team championships over 42 times across their epic career, and they will go down in history as one of the greatest tag teams to ever lace the boots. Number 5. The Steiner Brothers. On January 1989, Rick and Scott, the Steiner Brothers, would debut as a tag team for World Championship Wrestling, and they would capture the NWA World Tag Team Championships on November 1st, 1989 by defeating the Fabulous Freebirds, Michael P.S. Hayes and Jimmy Garvin. The pair would dominate the tag team scene well into 2012, winning 23 tag team titles along the way. Considered one of, if not the most dominant tag teams of the 1990s, the Steiner Brothers worked for all the major promotions during this time. WCW announcers would refer to them as Triple Crown Champions, as they had held the WCW World and United States Tag Team titles, as well as the IWGP Tag Team Championships during this time. Number 4. The British Bulldogs. Real-life cousins Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid would break into the wrestling business in the late 70s and the early 80s. After signing to Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling in 1981 and feuding against each other from 82 to 83, they would find themselves paired up as a tag team for the first time at New Japan Pro Wrestling's New Year Golden Series of 1984. A few months later, at the Stampede International Tag Team Tournament, Davey Boy would leave his usual partner Bruce Hart and form the British Bulldogs with Dynamite Kid. going on to win the tournament and become the champions on March 31st, 1984. The pair would find themselves in the World Wrestling Federation after Stampede was bought out by Vince McMahon, working for All Japan Pro Wrestling during that time. Due to the working relationship between them and the WWF, the British Bulldogs would become one of the most recognized tag teams of the 80s. In 1988, the British Bulldogs would leave the WWF and continue to work for AJPW until Davey Boy Smith re-signed with the WWF as a singles competitor in September of 1990, ending the team. In their time together, they would become 3-time World Tag Team Champions and be ranked worldwide amongst the top tag teams of the 80s. Number 3. The Funk Brothers. 12-time tag team champions, the real-life brothers Terry Funk and Dory Funk Jr. teamed together on and off from 1965 to 2013. Winning All Japan Pro Wrestling's World's Strongest Tag Team League tournament in 1977, 1979, and 1982 along the way. In 1986, the World Wrestling Federation would bring in Dory Funk Jr. to team with Terry Funk, renaming him Hoss Funk. The Funk Brothers would appear at WrestleMania 2 and later have a great feud with the British Bulldogs. Terry would depart the WWF in 1986, leaving a note to Vince McMahon in what would become a running joke between the pair, saying at the time his horse was sick and he had to go back to the Double Cross Ranch to look after it. Dory would briefly team up with his new partner, Hangman Jimmy Jack Funk, until leaving a few months later. The Funk Brothers wouldn't team regularly again until returning to All Japan Pro Wrestling in 1990. Dory Funk Jr. would later join Terry Funk at ECW in 1994 during a feud with the Public Enemy, and they would have the first ever no-rope barbed wire match in ECW's history at Heatwave 1994. This match is one of the craziest matches of the Funk Brothers' careers, and it's well worth seeking out if you haven't seen it. Number 2. Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody. From 1975 to 1984, wrestling's greatest outlaws terrorized any team that stood before them. Originally teaming up in Leroy McGurk's Tri-State Territory in 1975 whilst Brody was going by his real name Frank Gudish, they started wrestling in All Japan Pro Wrestling together in 1982. The Japanese press dubbed them the Miracle Power Combination, and in 1983, Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen would take place in the World's Strongest Tag Determination League, or as it's known in the West, the Real World Tag League Tournament, beating Genichiro Tenryu and Jumbo Tsuruta on December 12th, winning the tournament. In April 1984, All Japan would hold a tournament to crown the first ever PWF Tag Team Champions. Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody would face Giant Baba and Dory Funk Jr. in the finals on April 25th and become the first ever PWF World Tag Team Champions. In 1984, Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen would return to the Real World Tag League Tournament, this time losing to Tenryu and Tsuruta in the finals in a brutal match after Hansen attacks the referee, getting them disqualified. This would be the last time the pair would team, but they would leave a lasting impression in the hearts of the Japanese fans, with many calling them the greatest tag team of all time still to this day. Number 1. The Legion of Doom. The 18-time Tag Team Champions of the world originally started out in Paul Ellering's Legion of Doom stable at Georgia Championship Wrestling in 1983. Along with Hawk and Animal, the stable consisted of The Spoiler, Matt Bourne, the original Sheik, the Iron Sheik, Arn Anderson, King Kong Bundy, and Jake the Snake Roberts. But before long, the stable only consisted of Hawk and Animal, and the team would start going by the name the Road Warriors, a name Animal had briefly gone by before. Due to their imposing size and looks, it was only a few short months from their debut that they would capture the NWA World Tag Team Championships. In 1984, Hawk and Animal debuted for Vern Gagne's Minnesota-based promotion, the American Wrestling Association, making them nationally recognized stars and quickly becoming the AWA's top draw throughout 1984 and 1985. By 1985, the Road Warriors had begun touring for Japan with All Japan Pro Wrestling, and they made headlines around the country after squashing Animal Hamaguchi and Killer Khan in around 3 minutes. The team was in such high demand between the AWA, Japan, and the NWA that in 1986 they would depart the AWA for higher paying matches with the National Wrestling Alliance. In 1988, during the November 26th episode of World Championship Wrestling, the Road Warriors attacked Dusty Rhodes, with Animal using a spike from one of their shoulder pads to try and gouge his eye out. This caused TBS television executives to fire Rhodes shortly after for blading during the attack, as they were under strict instructions not to bleed. On July 15, 1990, on an episode of WWF Wrestling Challenge, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal debuted as the Legion of Doom. They would go on to win their first WWF Gold on August 26, 1991 at SummerSlam, defeating the Nasty Boys. A year after SummerSlam in August 1992, Hawk went missing in action and they would both leave shortly after that. Returning to the ring in 1996 for WCW briefly for just 6 months, then back to the WWF in 1997 before vanishing, they would later return in 1998 to the WWF as LOD 2000. The pair's last appearance was in 2003, returning to the WWE to take on the tag team champions Kane and Rob Van Dam. 5 months after this, Hawk tragically passed away, leaving behind an amazing legacy. Do you agree with this list? Did we forget to tag in your favorite team? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more Savage Wrestling videos. And as always, thanks for watching and stay Savage Wrestling fans. Woo, yeah, you're looking at the future of professional wrestling YouTube. Yeah, it's undeniable. Dig it!